We're the Vinyl Verdict. I'm Jacob.
I'm Michael.
We're here on November 2nd, 2023, and we just heard Now and Then, the Beatles' new single, for the first time, and we're going to discuss it a little bit with you. So this song comes from a lot of context. Obviously, there was this band called the Beatles that was the best-selling artist in Western history. 25 years later, released 2 versions of John's demos, re-recorded. Now here we are again, 30 years after that, to discuss the third aborted version of that project, which is Now and Then. Real Love was featured in the Imagine movie that Yoko did in the 80s. So that was out there and it was played in the Lost Lennon tapes. Free as a Bird, I don't think that demo had really leaked before that time. Now and Then has leaked over maybe the last 10 years. I don't think it was really known in the community much before that. But now we're more familiar with the John demo, so maybe it is more similar to Real Love in that way, where fans know it. The Beatles are more layering parts on top of the template of it rather than adding completely new sections or new lyrics like Free as a Bird had. It definitely, I guess my first impression, I'll just say, well, one, it sounds like the Beatles. This is not any other band. You can hear all 4 of them in there. Yeah. It sounds like a modernized, ethereal version of it. And for that reason, it sounds like it belongs on, an EP in the 90s with Real Love, Free as a Bird, and Now and Then. It's all kind of these piano demos that are then slowed down ballad.
Heavy bass, Paul's bass unites them all. And there is a connection between the two that we know so well over the years, and there's a connection between what we've now heard. It's just reviving with technology and the talent that still is in the 2 surviving members now. And the talent that George had, he's on the record, and it does bring it alive. It still is building on those late 70s demos, which I think you hear and which would be the common thread. Yeah.
Which is swampier and slowed down. And I think Free as a Bird, they sped up slightly, maybe. Or at least they had to keep it at a constant tempo for the drumming. This could have been sped up slightly more if it wasn't already. I don't think John Lennon would have played it at this speed if he knew it was a Beatles song. They do something similar to Free as a Bird where it has, these big open acoustic chords with the piano kind of filling in the gaps, which is a nice touch, but I can't think of any Beatles song that uses that effect other than Free as a Bird. So again, it is kind of limited to what the original recording provided. Although, another point is that Paul re-recorded the piano part. So if you're only taking John's voice, you really could almost do anything when you think about how much you can sample just a voice recording. I was maybe slightly let down by how much they reinforce the melody. I think the melody is probably the strongest part of the song. To me, it's not one of John's standout demos even from this period, but it has a very nice iconic Lennon melody, and so they're tracing that same melody out on the Paul slide guitar solo, which is a nice touching tribute to George within a tribute to John song. The strings, it sounds like, are playing the same melody, at least in certain parts, and that's not really the way George Martin produced songs back in the day. He did counter melody, or he would do call and response, but it wasn't like directly mimicking melodies on different instruments.
Well, we're bringing up a whole nother subject. As I said to any Beatle fan, you're going to love it in the first minute of the record. The melody is there, and it's built upon, and different beautiful modern touches are added to it. Songwriting for him, it would probably not be among the strongest melodies he ever produced, with the amazing muse that was with him and with Paul. And yet it's great to hear it. But you have it right away. There's not melodic surprises on it. It's beautifully done and synced together right away. And it's kind of the song is there. So that's maybe perhaps not as fully developed, but it was a demo.
And it's limited by the fact now George isn't here either. So I think controversially they sampled the strings from Because and Eleanor Rigby and maybe another song. A little more the 21st century approach maybe to producing. And I like the idea of putting Easter eggs in there and maybe interpolating some of those songs on strings, but literally taking the exact same parts like they did for the Love thing. That Love was a one-off to me. I don't want every future Beatles-related remix to have other songs sampled in it.
Well, this song is a dreamy kissing cousin to Real Love and Free as a Bird as far as the recordings themselves, which were obviously demos. And this particular one out of the 3 maybe is a little closer to Free as a Bird in the dreamlike flow that it has, which was John's, you could trace back through many songs. But, who is he singing to? Is it him?
Well, so actually a lot of people speculate the reason Paul picked this song is that, or it has such emotional resonance to him. He says the last words John Lennon said to him were, "Think of me every now and then, my friend." And so I think it has some symbolism to him that it was recorded, whereas again, as without that context, if you just hear the song, which is probably how it was written, it's a phrase that John liked, and maybe they were even placeholder words that didn't ever get finished. I definitely think there's stronger songs from the period. And to be very technical about it, because we are hardcore Beatle fans, the tape that Yoko handed to Paul had 4 songs on it. Last one was Grow Old With Me. I think that's probably the strongest out of the 4 objectively from the demo, if you just listen to the demo. However, the tape quality was so poor, I think in that case they really had a hard time working with it. George Martin scored it. Ringo has it on his most recent album with Paul playing bass. So in a way, that one was finished too now. You actually have 4 Beatles songs. But I think for the way that they were able to Beatle it up, for lack of a better term, Free as a Bird is probably the one that's the most outstanding to me, where they really all contributed to the direction of the song. And it sounds like something totally different than what I could have done independently.
I would say that's the strongest of the 3 that we have.
I would have liked to hear maybe some different part that, Paul came up with a middle 8 or something to put in there.
Yes.
I think that's some of the best Lennon-McCartney songwriting. There was this 12-minute documentary that came out the day before on November 1st, which was put together showing the life of this project, going back to John's demo through to the sessions with George Harrison in the 90s, through to resurrecting it in 2022. And it was more of a promotional thing, honestly. As much as I love seeing extra footage from those sessions, it was more hype, I think, for the song.
Well, there's no doubt.
Yeah.
But it was exciting to hear Paul talk about how he had heard the song, how they let it go in 1995, how they filed it away, and then the screen goes black. To 2022, I guess, when it was really actually done. And the thrill of me seeing Paul finally begin to add the bass in it, and then you see these other things come in. That's enough for me to hear a high bass note from him at the end, or see him just thumping it as he gets the feel for it.
And playing something that works with the song, but it's not just the root notes, he's adding a flavor to it. He's playing different kind of scales into the different chords. And so again, I wish bass wasn't the only part they did that. And the drum part and everything, it sounds like they're trying to emulate themselves on Free as a Bird and take a very similar approach. Now the technology's a little bit better, but effectively they have a formula for how they take a John Lennon piano demo and convert it into a Beatles song, and they're running that formula on this song. And I appreciate it. I love it as a Beatles fan. I'm going to listen to this a heck of a lot more than I would have listened to the original demo.
Well, they punch it up, to use a phrase, remarkably. The Beatles, is it 2 Beatles? It's all the Beatles? A studio work of wonder.
When they did isolate John's voice, fans were crying when they watched this documentary and everything, and there was a premiere of it where it was very emotional. Definitely takes it much more to the forefront than you're ever going to hear in a piano demo. But what was interesting about it, especially when they cut out all the reverb and everything, you can tell there's a little more complexity in the melody than when I just heard this song on other tapes over the years.
And it's hard to say it in any other way except the way he sang, and the way syllables come out, and the way it's not quite where he dips or where he comes back up. Is he sang his heart and his guts out when he sang. So it's nice to get a taste of that here.
It's cool to see that footage from the 90s. I mean, I imagine the entire time the 3 of them were in a room, there was at least some camera on. I think there's tens of hours of footage of them recording that very little has trickled out from. So it's just nice to see the Threedles doing their thing for the couple sessions they had.
It goes into an explanation of the process of handling John's voice. AI or whatever it was, that to any musician's ears, to any Beatle fan, has to be interesting.
It's great too that they tried. They did this on Revolver, and fans were clamoring for them to go back to earlier recordings. They skipped Rubber Soul, or maybe they'll come back, but they're doing it with the whole Red album, obviously. So that's great, but it's so special that they didn't forget about this other project. At the same time that they're applying this technology to these professional studio recordings, Paul has this completionist mindset where he wants to go back and finish the last Beatles song. And so there's something kind of touching about doing that in parallel, even though I have reservations about that being included on the Blue album. I mean, here we are at the end of 2023. They're still putting ADT on John's voice. Paul's harmonizing with him. It's a pretty special moment to be a Beatles fan, so we're lucky to have it. No one had to do this. Obviously, they could have just released Sgt. Pepper for the 10th time, but we're glad to have something new.
Fantastic.
So,